It's unfolded here, resulting in an explosion in deadly fentanyl trafficking, and it is coming in via cartels and those that are being trafficked through our borders, okay? Human trafficking, rampant violence against women and children. The Biden administration's policy blunders are directly responsible for this tragic and out-of-control situation. You know, I recently read a report in which the regional director for Latin America from the International Coalition Against Trafficking in Women stated that up to 60% of Latin American children attempting to cross our southern border are caught by cartels and then exploited in child sexual abuse material, also known as child pornography. This is heartbreaking and is utterly unacceptable. Mr. Wolf, based on your experience leading the Department of Homeland Security as Secretary, can you speak to the dangers of sexual violence, particularly facing children, during the trek to our southern border?
Well, absolutely. They're subjected to any number of abuse, rape, worse, murder. The journey that they embark on is one that, you know, it's incomprehensible. And so the idea during the Trump administration, and I think what most Americans would agree with, is let's not subject those children or individuals or adults or really anyone to that dangerous journey. Absolutely. Let's make sure that we give them the protections, if they truly need it, closest to home.
I thank you. I thank you for your service. I thank you for the sacrifice of your families and others, and for saving others here in America. As my friend Mr. Wilson said earlier, Mr. Chair, my time's expired and I yield back.
Generally yields. Chair recognizes Mr. Connolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Isaacson, I want you to speak into that microphone. We want to hear you as loud as the two gentlemen on your right have been. Mr. Wolf, I'm sorry, Mr. Isaacson, why do people come here illegally? I mean, why not just go through the system like apparently Ms. Wagner's relatives did and be right with the Lord and everything's hunky-dory? Why do people come here illegally?
Well, I mean, for a few reasons, obviously. I mean, if you're coming illegally, which means you're not even asking for asylum, you just want to come here and start working, that would be it. It's probably poverty, and it's likely that our laws from the 1990s have not changed to make citizenship or residency or work permits more available to you.
So one of the programs that was created to deal with the border situation was Remain in Mexico. Is that right?
Apparently, yes.
And if you're seeking asylum, which is a special category in immigration, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And it historically receives a certain respect, right? Certain protocols are triggered when someone appeals for asylum.
Correct, and you should get due process.
You're not just any immigrant, you're in a special category. So people who were subjected to Remain in Mexico seeking asylum, what percentage of those people were adjudicated in that program? Do you know? Seeking asylum.
Yeah, I mean, they were all asylum seekers. Roughly half got to court, and only 2%, which is far less than the regular immigration courts, only 2% were able to get protection.
Did you say 2%?
The approval rate was about 2%.
Well, that doesn't sound successful.
Certainly not for the asylum seekers, it wasn't. Well,
in whose administration did this Remain in Mexico program get started?
It was the middle of 2019, Donald Trump's administration.
Oh. Got a failure on our hands in the Trump administration. Okay, well, let's pick one that was successful. If you remember in the 2016 campaign, that same individual became president. We recognize election results on this side of the aisle. He promised two things. We're going to build a wall, and who's going to pay for it?
Mexico.
Yeah, he would even get audiences to answer that question. So, how much of the wall, we got a 1,954-mile border, how much of the wall got built? Do you know?
All told, including replacements and others, Trump, I want to say about 600 miles of fencing.
And who paid for it?
The United States taxpayer.
Not Mexico?
Not a peso.
Another failure. Of which administration again, remind me?
The Trump administration.
Trump administration. So, Mr. Wolf has said everything's on the table with respect to addressing the border. Do you hear him say that?
Yes, and I saw the quote in the media.
Now, we've actually had some Republican candidates running for president who have included in that category, at least for them. I don't know if Mr. Wolf would include it, and I'm not asking him because I have little time. Let's invade Mexico. We can do something about cartels. We can do something about crime. We can do something about illegal immigration crossing the border. Do you think that would be a wise policy to invade Mexico?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Well, I mean, first of all, it would go against the will of a sovereign country. But second, we've taken down cartels
but
for
we want everything
years
on
and
the
nothing's
table, don't we?
changed. I mean, I guess that would be on the table always, but I don't know what purpose it would serve having that on the table.
What about putting kids in cages? How about that?
That has not proven to deter kids from coming, that's for sure. And of course, it's cruel.
So, but presumably, if we're going to have everything on the table, like we did in which administration were kids put in cages?
The Trump administration.
Another success story. Okay, but if we're going to put everything on the table, should that be on
No,
the?
you're right. You're right. Actually.
Should that be on the table?
I do not think that would ever be on the table. Detention of children should not be on the table.
Why?
We are not a country that sees itself as a country that puts kids in prisons. Kids should be in proper settings.
So you're actually telling us that we've got values we should be honoring as we deal with any kind of situation on the border.
It's what makes us a democratic nation.
I thank you. I yield back.
Chairman recognizes Mr. Mast.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Connolly, I hope you stick around for a minute. Should I understand?
Mass, I'm not here for your pleasure or enjoyment. I have a schedule to keep.
You rarely
Thank you.
offer me pleasure and enjoyment. I would agree
Well, and I
So,
assure you the
but
feeling is mutual, Mr. Mass.
with this goes to you and Mr. Isaacson and your conversation just now. Should I understand from your questioning that any mile not built you consider a failure? Any mile of wall not built you consider a failure?
Would you repeat the question? You want me to answer?
Yeah,
I'd be glad to. Would you repeat the question?
Whenever I ask questions, I do always give you guys time to answer, so I'll ask it again. Based upon the way I heard you asking questions, any mile of wall that was not built, would you consider that a failure?
I consider the fact that a presidential candidate campaigned on the issue of I will build a wall that covers the entire border of the United States with Mexico, and the Mexicans will pay for it.
I heard
you
your
and he got
talking point
rallies,
already.
and
But
he got
do you
rallies to
consider
answer
a
that.
mile of wall
yes,
not
I
built a
consider
failure?
that an abject failure, and I consider it
A mile of wall not built as a
and I
failure?
consider it a con job on the American
Do
people.
you think we should build every single mile of wall? Should we build every single mile of wall?
I don't think it's practical, and I don't think it will work.
I think it shows how little you know about physical security.
Well, I don't think it's your business to be speculating on what I know and don't know, Mr. Mast.
It's my business, physical security, being on
Why don't
one
you
side
stick?
of a wall
Why
or
don't you
another.
stick to what you know as opposed to what I know?
I can speak to what you know. I can speak to what it appears that you know. I
Well-
think we all can.
You're good at throwing insults. I know I've seen it with Mr. Meeks.
It's not an insult. It's fact.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I thought I was being asked questions and
Of course.
being able to answer.
And does the gentleman from Florida
Yes.
yield to the gentleman from Virginia?
I did, but I'm going to move back to the panel now. I thought it was interesting. I thought maybe it was a point of agreement that any mile of wall not yet built is a failure, that we should get to every single mile of wall being built because physical security does matter. Does it mean somebody's not going to try to jump it or burrow under it or cut through it or go around it in some other kind of way? Sure, somebody's going to try to do that. But as somebody that's been on a wall in Afghanistan and other places, I can tell you that it certainly makes a damn good amount of difference that that wall is there. How tall it is, how much of an area it encompasses, you name it, it makes a huge amount of difference. And so I thought it could have been a point of bipartisanness. Mr. Isaacson, I want to ask you a question. Your testimony was interesting, and the testimony of everybody was interesting. You said this is not the border situation the U.S. government prepared for. Expand a little bit.
Absolutely. In the 1990s and after 9/11, we built up a border infrastructure designed for Mexican males or potential terrorists. And now, 2/3 of who are coming are people asking for asylum and are often families and children.
And I think the numbers bear that out. I don't think you're saying something that's not true in there. And I think when we layered upon things that the other panelists have said, I think it works very well to say, okay, we have a situation that wasn't prepared for. but are we going to follow the law or are we not going to follow the law? Do words have meaning or do words not have meaning? Are we going to say that somebody is granted asylum because we're going to not define the word humane or inhumane and just say, well, if there was meanness in your country, then you're allowed in? Or if there was poverty in your country, that constitutes a credible threat to life, so you're going to be allowed in. Or if you used the word the intimidation in earlier questioning, said there was intimidation. If there's intimidation, does that constitute a credible threat to life? And the fact of the matter is, the situation at the border is not what we prepared for, because we're allowing people in under definitions that don't meet what we prepared for. We prepared for an actual credible threat to life. And we've moved to a situation where everybody that makes a complaint about their country and is unwilling to look at a different city in their country, a different territory in their country, an adjacent country to them, because they're unwilling to look at that, will say, well, it must have been a credible threat to life. And I'm going to give the last word to the other panelists here to just simply talk about what you see in terms of the lack of truly looking at the word of the law and the word of the law that we must follow as a United States government.
Well, thank you for that important question. This Congress has the ability to change those laws. If it doesn't like the laws, if it doesn't like the grounds on which someone can be granted asylum, it can certainly change them if they want to. But doing so would be I think, a serious problem. To cover all of those areas, because we cannot become the place for everyone across the world to come to this one country. God made a wonderful world. It has a lot of great places across it. We cannot be the only place in the entire world where every single person who wants more money or better protection from crime comes to the United States to be saved. What I would say is that one of the other things that is critically important about this entire situation is that, factually speaking, right now at the border, these people, the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of aliens crossing the border are not even being subjected or assessed for credible fear screenings. They're not even testing if these people have an asylum claim. They're just issuing court papers and letting them go. Out of, I think yesterday there was something like 9,400 crossings at the border. And out of that 9,400, preliminary reporting indicates at least 5,200 of them were just given paperwork to go show up in court someday. This is a significant and serious problem. The administration is not even assessing these people for any potential asylum claims. They're just letting them.
Gentlemen's time's expired. We have a vote coming up in 5 minutes, and we have a lot of members. So in fairness, I'm going to have to limit the members to 2 minutes. Which, I apologize. This has been a very great avid discussion, but I want to make sure I get in as many people as I can. So, gentleman from Mr. Keating is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Wolf, American First Policy Institute. Sounds pretty good to me. You're the executive director? I've got 2 minutes, please.
Yes, I am. Sorry, yes.
Chief Strategy Officer, who would that? Would that be you?
Yes.
Chair, that's you too.
Of the Homeland Security and Immigration
Fair
Center.
to say you know a lot about this institute. So tell me who pays your salary. About $20 million at least that you've got. So you should know in those positions, where's the money coming from?
Donors.
That's good. Who is the money coming from exactly?
We have a number of donors. We have
No, what are the
we have
names?
44
Names,
we have
or I want some
44,000.
organizations. Will you not disclose? You're here credentialed in that capacity. Tell me who's paying you, and don't say donors. Tell me who. What organizations? Who's behind it? I know one of them is the Trump political PAC. Is that correct?
That's incorrect.
Well, that's been reported. So correct me. Give me the names.
We
Are
have
you gonna-
44,000 individual
All right, forget
donors
it.
to AFPI.
All right, so you're here credentialed. I've got 2 minutes. I'm sorry. You're here credentialed with a nice sounding name, and you're not telling us who's paying your salary, even though you have those positions. All right. Number one, you're also credentialed because you're a former Secretary of Homeland Security. And let me clear the record on that and make sure everyone gets this, that you were appointed. 2 courts have ruled, 2 courts that existed under the Trump administration ruled that you had that position illegally. So there's your credentials. Now let me say this. Your testimony today said that it's okay for the United States to take military action, deploy young men and women, soldiers from the United States in Mexico, even though the Mexican government doesn't want them there. You also said it's okay.
It's not my testimony.
It absolutely was, sir. I was here and I listened to it. Number two,
Disagree.
you said it's okay that the U.S. can separate children as they have in the past.
Again,
From their
not my
mothers,
testimony.
Put them in cages. That indeed, sir, was your testimony, and that's a fact. Listen, I think our board is in crisis.
Every hearing.
I think we have to do something about it. I just hope the Senate, as they're negotiating, can come up with a bipartisan solution to really do something meaningful and not listen to failed
Let me ask a question of the
past. And
witness.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
And I appreciate the passion. Well, let's entertain this issue. There are a lot of members here. It's a very vigorous debate. Are the witnesses? We have a vote until probably 5 o'clock. And I want to respect the witnesses' time. Do they have time to come back or remain here until after votes, at which time we could reconvene?
I do.
And Mr. Hamilton.
Seeing as how I'm a fan of making people wait, yes.
So, Mr. Keating, everybody will have 5 minutes. I will yield 3 minutes.
Thank you. If we're back, and Mr. Chairman, I really appreciate that. And if I'm not back that early, don't hold everyone else up, but I'll be around. Thank you so much.
Okay, perfect. Chair now recognizes Mr. Burchett.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, or Mr. Chairman. Quickly wasting my time here. Thank you. Mr. Hamilton, does the Border Patrol have the authority to refuse to allow illegal crossings?
Depending on the context in which you're speaking, at a port of entry, they certainly do. And certainly that's why they build physical infrastructures to prevent the illegal entry of aliens into the United States, which is, of course, is also a federal crime.
Great. What legal authority does a state like Texas have to protect its border?
Well, under current interpretations of various courts, those authorities remain limited under certainly Supreme Court's decision in Arizona. Under the Constitution, I think there's those who have different thoughts about that.
Okay. Mr. Wolf, Vice President Harris was put in charge of the border crisis by President Biden. What has she done?
Little to nothing, in my opinion.
What can you tell us about the trafficking of children across the southern border?
Again, in this, over the last 32, 33 months, we've had about 500,000 unaccompanied alien children being trafficked across that border.
500,000.
That is a record number in the last almost 3 years.
500,000 in 3 years, did you say?
A little under 3 years.
Okay. If American companies invested in a country like Guatemala and created jobs there, would that help with the flow of migrants?
Undoubtedly, yes.
How is Secretary Mayorkas hiding illegal immigrants using the CBP One app?
Well, again, a number of aliens are using that CBP app to come into the country. They're waiting in northern Mexico, and we talk a lot about MPP, but they have their version of MPP, which is using that CBP One app that you can only access in northern Mexico and then having to wait in northern Mexico to receive your appointment at a port of entry.
Is Mayorkas fulfilling his constitutional duty?
That is a negative, no, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Chairman, whatever. I'll yield you the rest of my time. I'm reclaiming my time, which means nothing. Oh, Maria. I would like to yield the remainder of my time to Maria Salazar. I think I have about a minute and a half.
Thank you very much. I'm Maria Salazar from the city of Miami, and I just want to say thank you, Congressman. I just want to say that we have the same goals. I agree with sealing the border. I voted for H.R. 2, and I'm just like you, nauseated by the fact that kids are being trafficked. You know, those children belong to my community. I belong to the Hispanic minority, which is the largest minority in the country. So I'm with you. Biden has done a horrible job, right? So we are on the same page. My problem is that H.R. 2, which is the law that we passed, needs some teeth for it to become the law of the land. Do you agree with me? Do you think, Mr. Wolf, that H.R. 2 will become the law of the land? You think it could pass the Senate it will be signed by President Biden. Yes or no?
I think it would be a good step forward to securing the border.
No, we understand that it would be fantastic. The problem is that there's something missing, which is what are we going to do with those 10 million people who are here, and that we understand that under President Trump, who had an effective immigration policy, sir, I'm looking at you, sir, Mr. Wolf,
Yes.
right? Mr. Trump deported 8,000 illegals a year, but if we make the math, if we do the math, we're talking about 10 million inland, so that's 123 years that we would need in order to deport everybody. So all I'm trying to do, and I repeat, I'm on your side, is try to really get something on the books so we can seal the border and stop having those kids being raped. What do you think we could do?
I think
Effectively.
I think the question here is, what do you do with the number of individuals here in the United States? Do you deport them? Do you remove them?
But stop
Or
right
do
there.
you-
Yes. Okay, let's try to deport them. We have tried that. But, am I right in saying that we don't have enough agents? Mr. Trump
it's
tried it.
without a doubt a challenge.
Mr. Obama tried it. Every single president has tried it. And they are working on the fields, in construction, and hospitality. Am I correct? Am I rigorous in what I'm saying?
It's been a
Don't
challenge
you
without a
think that
doubt.
The Republicans should be the party, so the Dems will not call us a bunch of racists anymore. That they do not have the monopoly on compassion. We are compassionate too, because you're concerned about those kids that speak and sound like me are being raped right now. Correct? So don't you think that the Republicans should be the party that should be ahead, finding a solution so we can stop this and put some order at the border, stop the asylum system being gamed, because, my people are gaming it every single day. Do I make sense?
Yes, Congressman.
So then what do you think we should do as Republicans?
Again, I think H.R. 2 is a good first step. I think there's a lot more that can be done to secure that border. I think as you deal with, and it's really an issue for Congress, as you deal with the individuals that are here illegally, you have to close the loopholes that continue to funnel more and more folks coming here illegally.
Oh, I agree with you. Let's
And so
seal,
part of that is
let's
HR
seal
2.
the border. Let's seal it. I have presented a law called the Dignity Act, which does that. And
General
burns at the stake
General Lee's
the
time
child sex
expired.
traffickers. Just
General Lee's
30
time
more minutes.
expired.